Hello, Jeannette Chau. It's a pleasure to have you with us today. Jeannette, you are an electrical engineering, but also an author of children's books, children's books that aim to inspire young girls to enter an engineering profession. So my first question is, how did you come up with this idea of writing children's books with this specific topic?
Well, as you mentioned, I'm an electrical engineer myself. And I know that in my own profession, I see that there's not very many women in it. When I graduated, and this is a number of years back, I was one of 10 women in a class of 120. And unfortunately, we say that there's been a lot of progress and more women are entering other fields. And for example, in medicine, it's at least 50% women now, a lot more women in law, but in engineering, it's still quite low. The needle hasn't moved very much. It's still just over 20%. There has been a concerted effort over the last few years to try to get more women into the profession, and it's just opening people's minds as to what it is. Now, when I look at the literature, we're trying to get the girls from high school to consider it as a profession, but you really need to start younger and to catch the imaginations of young children as to what engineering is about. And I know that when I was growing up, I really didn't know engineers. And you'll see that for most families. For example, you bring your children to see a doctor. Your family might have to go see a lawyer, or someone who's had to see a lawyer, or you hear about accountants, etc. But how many families ever go see an engineer? Companies and the families don't get exposed to engineers. If a girl, and the studies have shown that if a girl does enter engineering, it's really because they knew someone, a family member was an engineer, or a guidance counselor or someone at school suggested it to them. So that's where you have to sort of give that information to the children. And as I said, when I looked at books for young children, you'll see that there are a few children's books that talk about engineering, but engineering in general. So engineers, they design things, they build buildings, and there's a lot of stereotypes. You see the engineer in the hard hat, and all they do is build bridges and buildings. But engineering is so much broader. I mean, chemical engineers, they're working on quality control, food products, the chemicals that go into preservations of foods, and there's a lot of different aspects of engineering that, even when I went into engineering, I didn't realize engineers could do. And an electrical engineer, such as myself, what I specialize in is totally different from what a civil engineer does, or what a mechanical engineer does, or what an industrial engineer or an aerospace engineer does. And so while it's all engineering, just knowing that, okay, well, what are the different types? What are the things you can do? And a civil engineer, that's the one most people think of, right? Building buildings and bridges. Well, a civil engineer is really about anything that has to do with municipal or city design. So, for example, the mother that's portrayed in my civil engineering book, she's a traffic planner. So she's designing the traffic flow that's proper for a city. And I also talk about what other civil engineers do. And yes, they do buildings, but there's more to it, right?
Mm-hmm. So. And but why do you think that engineering is a profession mainly dominated by men?
I think it has to go back to the roots of things, building things. Engineering started off mainly as building buildings and bridges. There was other parts, electrical engineering, that men tended to gravitate towards. That's just one part. The stereotypes and the culture of the stereotypes of girls don't see themselves in the roles because the people that they see tend to be men. But the other part, unfortunately, is the fact that girls aren't encouraged to keep their maths and physics. And they drop out of the maths, or they decide, I don't need it. I want to go into some other area. And then when they decide later that, hey, maybe I would like to go into engineering, they don't have the courses to be able to stick with it. So if they can be told at the beginning, oh, I'm interested in being an engineer, and they said, okay, well, this is what you need to get there, then they'll hang on to their maths. And there's a lot of girls who are very good in math, but they just, for one reason or another, just let it go.
Mm-hmm. And why did you choose this specific age, 4 to 8 years old, Is there a reason? Because maybe we know that in these ages, children already thinking about their future profession, but eventually they can also change their minds. So,
oh, yes.
About that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, kids are always changing their minds. They want to be a firefighter. They want to be something exciting. I wanted to be an astronaut when I was a kid. So, yes. But I targeted that age because I wanted to plant the idea early. As I said, get that idea that, oh, this is what an engineer does, and maybe look into it further. And if they like to build things, if they like to design things, maybe that's something that they can consider. So I just saw that there wasn't anything for kids at that age. You have kids' books on, I want to be a firefighter, but there are no books on, I want to be an engineer, unless, as I said, it's very, very general. And then they might have male figures in the story. I wanted mine, and I'll be honest, I was targeting young girls. So that's why I used a mother as the main character, because girls all have mothers and they know about mothers and they figure they'll grow up to be a mother eventually. So if, mothers can do this, well, then they can grow up and maybe they can be an engineer too, if a mother can be an engineer. So that's why. Yeah.
When you look back at your own childhood, would you have liked to have read a book like this when you were young? Because you said you didn't choose that profession that early, right?
No, I didn't. I actually, it was because I had male friends in high school that were going into it that made me to look into it. Otherwise, I had no idea. And the biggest thing for me, too, was that I didn't know what the different type of engineering professions or disciplines there were. So I picked electrical just because I thought, electricity, computers, etc. But, had I known, I might have considered some of the other disciplines.
What are your main arguments when you describe engineering as a passionate profession?
Not sure about passionate. I mean, I have a passion for the profession. I consider it a helping profession. So if we're looking at being compassion, it's a helping profession in that what you're designing is to fill a need, right? So you're helping people. So most designs that you have, it's to solve a problem. And that's why I say, here's the mother, she's a superhero. Because what do mothers do? You come to them with a problem and they help you. And that's what you're trying to do with engineering. It's like, we have a problem here. How do we get this to do whatever it is that they need you to, like a computer? Well, how do I get the computer to do this? How do I get lighting here? How do I build this structure? And that's how we're helping people, helping society. A lot of times it's something that's never been done, and the engineers get together and they figure it out.
And do you feel that with these two books that younger girls are getting more interested in the profession?
I'm hoping, it gives them, an idea of what an engineer does. I do a definition. There's an actual definition of what the engineer does. I give an example of the mother and what that particular mother does for their career. And then I talk about what other civil engineers do, because that isn't the only piece of the engineering discipline. And I think the most important thing, and what is important about the book, is at the very end, you show a photo, because the other illustrations are drawn illustrations. But at the end, you have a photo of the mother, and it's a real person. And you're showing them that this is a real engineer, female, and a real mother. And the kids that are named in there are her actual children. So it's not a made up story. It's not, I can't really be that, because it's, it's just a story. This is real.
Something concrete. Yes. So
yes.
Books, my mom is an electrical engineer. She's a superhero. And the second book is my mom is a civil engineer. She's a superhero. Do you plan any other books in the future?
Yes. I started the first one. I didn't even know if it was going to turn out. That's why I kind of based it on myself as the subject. Because I'm an engineer. I mean, I spent over 20 years in the telecom industry and another 12 in the regulating, where the licensing and regulatory body for engineers. So this is my first foray into children's books. I did take some children's writing courses just so I could have a good idea of how to appeal to children, but I wasn't sure. So I wrote the first one. It turned out okay. And then the second one is based on a good friend of mine, the civil engineer. And so that was the second one. So those are my first two. I wanted to try to get it out there, get it into some kids' hands, see how it goes. And then my hope is to continue the series because there are a lot of disciplines. I mean, mining engineering is very interesting. Very few women in mining engineering. Aerospace engineering is, it's exciting. It's space. I mean, that's what got me interested in science. And then mechanical engineering, like that's all those moving parts. Those are robots. Those are cars. Those are all the pieces that that are moving. So chemical engineering, materials engineering, biomedical engineering is a big field that's coming up. Nano engineering, where you're going to the really small stuff. I mean, it is quite broad. I would probably be kept busy for a number of years, but just taking it one step at a time. These are the first two.
And what about the reception among parents? Did you find out that if they are well informed or not as well informed about engineering?
It depends on the parent. If it's a parent who's already an engineer, then they're informed and it's like, oh, yes, I'd like to get this to help talk to my children about it. But if they aren't in engineering, I would say a lot of people aren't informed. They know about engineering in general, but they don't really know the specifics.
Where can people find your books and buy them?
So I sell them on my website. They're $10 each. And the website is just my name, www.jeannettechow.com. Two N's in the Jeannette. A lot of people forget one of the N's. Or you can get it on Amazon.ca. So if you do a search for the title in my name, you should be able to find it on Amazon.
Okay, thank you so much, Jeannette. I've done all of my questions. I don't know if you want to leave a final message to our Portuguese community, which is very strong in the civil construction, for instance. So we will have future Portuguese engineer girls in our community.
Yes. Well, a good friend of mine is Portuguese, and I went through electrical engineering with him. And, you probably know, too, the statistics that a lot of the Portuguese community don't aspire to go into university. And so hopefully, they'll see like, hey, I want to do this. And they'll decide to make that a career choice. Okay.
Thank you so much, Jeannette.
You too. Have a happy holiday.